Ever feel like you're completely out of options? Like you're trapped in a career dead end, crushed under the weight of debt, and navigating an economy that feels entirely unpredictable? You aren't alone. In 1919, a 31-year-old man named Conrad Hilton found himself in exactly that position. Today, his name is printed on thousands of luxury skyscrapers across the globe. But at 31, he was a complete failure. He was grieving the sudden death of his father in a car crash, entirely adrift, with exactly $5,000 to his name. His resume up to that point was a masterclass in professional disaster. He had tried politics, getting elected to the New Mexico legislature, only to quit out of frustration with bureaucratic backroom deals. He tried the entertainment industry, managing a touring musical trio that consistently failed to break even. His real dream was banking, so he pooled his savings and founded a local bank, only to be immediately frozen out by older partners. When another bank unexpectedly pulled a promised loan, his fledgling real estate firm collapsed right alongside his banking ambitions. He learned how to survive this kind of volatility growing up in the remote, sun-baked New Mexico territory. Working in his father's Frontier General Store, a cluttered utilitarian shop serving miners and railway workers, he mastered the brutal mechanics of local commerce. He learned early on that capital wasn't generated by grand ideas, but through relentless daily labor and capitalizing on the immediate needs of transient workers. This immersive education stripped away any romantic illusions about wealth. His early life was defined by extreme economic fluctuations and shattered plans. But that exact environment built an intense tolerance for risk and a deeply ingrained psychological resilience that would soon save his life. Still stubbornly clinging to his dream of becoming a powerful financier, Hilton took his remaining $5,000 and targeted the oil boom town of Cisco, Texas. He found an independent bank for sale for $75,000, but at the absolute last minute of negotiations, the absentee seller sent a telegram raising the price to $80,000. Disgusted by the extortion and lacking the capital to cover the difference, Hilton permanently terminated the deal and walked away. Exhausted and needing a place to sleep and rethink his failing life strategies, he crossed the street from the train depot. He stepped inside a dilapidated 2-story red brick building called the Mobley Hotel. What he saw inside immediately grabbed his attention. The lobby was swarming with exhausted oil roughnecks desperate for a bed. Because of the sheer density of transient workers flooding the town, the Mobley was operating at a massive 300% occupancy rate. This animated diagram shows exactly how the hotel accommodated that massive demand. Instead of renting a room for the night, the proprietor was renting out the 40 beds strictly in 8-hour shifts. By synchronizing the beds with the grueling industrial schedules of the nearby oil rigs, a single mattress generated 3 times its normal daily revenue without requiring a single inch of structural expansion. Hilton abandoned his lifelong banking dream on the spot. He realized that the true, sustainable wealth in a gold rush comes not from high-risk drilling, but from reliably servicing the desperate, inelastic needs of the drillers themselves. He leveraged his entire savings and borrowed heavily from friends to buy the Mobley. Once he owned the property, Hilton implemented an aggressive yield management strategy he called digging for gold. He scrutinized every single square foot of the hotel, looking to maximize its active revenue potential. This floor plan illustrates the traditional layout of a 1920s hotel. Notice the massive space highlighted in red. This was the dining room, which occupied a huge physical footprint, but generated negligible profits. Beside it is a vast, entirely empty waiting lobby. Hilton immediately shut the restaurant down. He converted that dead dining space into densely packed sleeping quarters, capturing the overflow of high-paying roughnecks and geometrically increasing his daily room revenue. Next, he audited that empty lobby. He physically reduced the size of the front desk and installed newsstands, gift counters, and display cases offering toothpaste, razors, and magazines. By capturing the discretionary spending of a captive, cash-rich audience, a single lobby counter began generating up to $8,000 a month. This specific innovation repositioned hotels as comprehensive retail ecosystems, turning the lobby into an active, high-margin revenue engine. Fueled by the massive cash flow from his highly optimized properties, Hilton scaled rapidly. Throughout the Roaring '20s, he used heavy leverage to acquire and build new properties across Texas, expanding his portfolio from absolutely nothing to a commanding 8-hotel empire. Then came October 1929. The stock market crash initiated a global economic contraction that utterly devastated the hospitality industry. Corporate expenditures evaporated, commercial travel vanished, and virtually overnight, an astonishing 81% of all hotels across the United States fell into absolute bankruptcy. Hilton's debt-heavy expansion left him completely exposed. Without tourists or traveling salesmen to fill his rooms, the capital required to service his massive mortgages dried up. He was systematically stripped of his properties until he found himself over $500,000 in personal debt, staring down the imminent foreclosure of his single remaining hotel. The crisis reached a point of profound, visceral humiliation. The former Texas millionaire could not even afford groceries for his family or fuel for his car. Forced to arrange a meeting with his suppliers to beg for mercy, he had to ask one of his own hotel bellboys, Eddie Fowler, to lend him $300, the young man's entire life savings, just to buy food and the gasoline needed to drive to the negotiation. A decade of grueling, brilliant operational work was systematically obliterated by macroeconomic headwinds he couldn't control. It is a stark reminder that building lasting wealth rarely follows a straight line. Frequently, it requires surviving total annihilation. The toll of this collapse went far beyond his bank accounts. Behind his executive exterior, Hilton struggled with severe, debilitating bouts of depression and a deep-seated loneliness. The crushing stress of his public failure ultimately fractured his first marriage, leading to a highly painful divorce that directly contradicted his devout religious beliefs. During these darkest moments of the 1930s, when many ruined executives were fleeing the country or giving up entirely, Hilton relied on a highly practical spiritual endurance. He engaged in a form of intense meditative prayer, intentionally waiting in a state of what he called inside silence, until his panic subsided and a rational, tactical solution presented itself. That clarity led to a masterstroke of swallowed pride. Facing a massive foreclosure from the powerful Moody family of Galveston, Hilton officially surrendered ownership of his remaining portfolio to them, but he negotiated a crucial concession. He convinced the Moodys to retain him as a salaried manager of the very assets they had just stripped from him. He kept his finger on the pulse of the market while avoiding the permanent stain of formal bankruptcy. By 1934, he saw an opening to reclaim his flagship hotel in El Paso. To secure the necessary capital, he took a massive, highly unorthodox risk. A local bank offered him a loan, but stipulated he also had to purchase $55,000 worth of toxic, distressed oil stock the bank was legally forbidden to hold. Hilton accepted the double debt load. Miraculously, the distressed stock subsequently surged in value, providing the exact liquidity he needed to systematically clear his massive Depression-era debts. He regained full control of his remaining hotels by the late 1930s. He didn't escape his collapse through the easy legal maneuver of bankruptcy. He clawed his way out through agonizing humiliation, immense psychological endurance, and an extreme, calculated appetite for risk. Having survived the abyss, Hilton emerged with a fortified risk tolerance and an immaculate credit rating. He recognized that massive economic downturns created the ultimate opportunity to acquire distressed legacy assets at a fraction of their replacement cost. He rapidly expanded his footprint out of Texas, moving aggressively into the competitive urban centers of the East Coast and Midwest. In 1954, Hilton executed a transaction that shifted the industry's center of gravity. He acquired his most formidable competitor, the Statler Company, for $111 million. Adding tens of thousands of rooms overnight, it stood as the largest real estate transaction in modern business history, establishing his undisputed monolistic dominance. This network map illustrates the technological leap that allowed his empire to scale. It represents Hilcron, the world's first centralized reservation system, which Hilton introduced in 1955. It allowed guests to instantly book rooms globally via telephone or teletype. Paired with massive corporate initiatives to install universal air conditioning and in-room televisions, Hilton engineered the permanent modern standard for travel. As his company expanded into cities like Madrid and Istanbul, Hilton treated his international properties as ideological bastions. He branded them Little Americas, using luxury hospitality and local hiring to project democratic standards in the thick of the Cold War. In a single lifetime, Conrad Hilton took an industry of fractured, localized boarding houses and transformed it into a highly corporatized, technologically integrated global machine. By the end of his life, his personal assets scaled well beyond $2 billion. Yet this public triumph masked a persistent internal isolation. He was a billionaire titan who remained at his core a man from the desert who felt most at peace in a quiet church pew. The isolation of his executive power exacted a continuous toll. He struggled with a lack of true peers. His high-profile marriage to the glamorous Hungarian actress Zaza Gabor in the 1940s was an agonizingly public disaster, ending in profound mutual unhappiness and intense media scrutiny that deeply tormented his traditional sensibilities. When Hilton passed away in 1979 at the age of 91, he delivered a final, shocking twist to his legacy. In a legal move that sent shockwaves through the corporate world and triggered a bitter, decade-long legal battle with his own son, his last will and testament effectively bypassed his descendants. He bequeathed 97% of his vast fortune to his philanthropic foundation. His will carried a strict mandate. The funds were to be used in perpetuity to alleviate human suffering, specifically directing support to disadvantaged children and the Catholic sisters whose teachings had provided the psychological bedrock for his survival during the Depression. Hilton standardized comfort for millions of travelers across an empire of concrete and steel. He ultimately used that multi-billion-dollar machine to fund a global humanitarian engine, demonstrating that even the heaviest debts and deepest failures can be transmuted into permanent relief for others.